Okay, so we were talking about the fact. I think did we get to my Malcolm at Bays? And we'll start from the top of Mem Aleph Amid Bays, the second line. So what we're talking about is we know that there's knas. So the Mishnah said that the rule is if you pay more than the actual restitution cost, that's a knas, that's a fine. That's not restitution, that's a fine. So then we said there's something called chatzinezek. So if you have an animal that gored, the first three times that it killed someone or damaged by goring is considered an unusual behavior in an animal. So the first three times you only pay half of the damage, and we just saw on the bottom of Mem Aleph Amud Aleph that let's say it's only worth $400 and it caused $1,000 worth of damage. You don't have to pay more than the value of the animal, even though that doesn't cover the cost that you owe. So like if your ox is worth $400 and it gored, it started ramming into windows or other animals and it caused $1,000 worth of damage. So because it hasn't been habituated, it's not a muad yet. So you only have to pay half the damages. So half of the $1,000 is $500, but that $500 is worth more than the ox is worth. The ox is only worth 400, so you only have to pay 400. But in general, for a muad, you would pay. For a tam, an unhabituated animal, you would only pay half of the damage. Once it's done three times, so we know that its habit is to damage that way. So you have to pay full damages. So when you pay only half damages, so it's a machlokas. Was it Rav Hunan or Rav Papa says half nezek is restitution, and Rav Huna Brady Rav Yeshua says that it's a fine. So we've been trying to prove that it's money and it's not a fine, because that's what we've been trying to prove. So on the second line here in my mouth of a base, Tashma Hemi Shorias Ploni or Shorshal Ploni Harezim Shalma Piatzmo. There's a brisa that says if someone admitted that his axe killed someone or someone's axe, he pays based on his own admissions. So isn't it talking about a tam, an animal that has not been habituated? Its habit is not to damage by goring. So the halacha is that if something is a knas, then you don't pay when you admit to it. You only pay a knas when the beis din obligates you. So if you have to pay when you're admitting that your animal damaged this way, if you pay from your own admission, it must be restitution. It must be mamon. It can't be knas because you don't pay knas by yourself. So the Gemara says lo b'muad. That brisa must be talking about a muad. So it's a muad. So when you're admitting, you're paying for the restitution cost, not any fines. But what would be the halacha for zatam? So Rav Huna would interpret it that if it was an animal that we don't know that its habit is to gore, you wouldn't pay by yourself because it is a fine. So then the Gemara says that a tani seifa abdul shalploni ena masham apiatzmo niflug v'nisag b'didei. But the second part of the brisa says if someone admits and says that your ox killed someone else's eved, you don't pay based on your own admission. So killing someone else's eved, there's a set fine of 30 shekels. So that's definitely a fine. So from the fact that it's talking of, and that's definitely a fine, and it says it in a separate case. So the seifa, according to the way you're interpreting the brisa now, the brisa should have listed it all in the same case. When do you pay from your own admission because it's already habituated? But a tam doesn't pay based on your own admission because according to you, Rav Huna, you hold that a tam is knas, so you wouldn't pay from your own admission for a tam. So the Gemara says, I think it's the 8th line, last word on line, kula b'muad kamairi. No, the whole mission is talking about muad. So we tried to disprove that half nezek is a knas. Tashma. Now we have another disproof. Call hamishal attempted disproof. Call zahaklal. This is a general rule. I think this is from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah Memalf Amid Aleph said this is the general rule. Whoever pays more than what he damaged does not pay from his own admission. So our Mishnah said this is a rule. Whoever pays more than what you damaged, you don't pay based on your own admission. Meaning that's a code word for being a knas, a fine. So the implication of our Mishnah is that implies that if you paid less than what you damaged, you do pay from your own admission. So that seems to be that half nezek would be mamon. Because if half nezek is knas, you wouldn't pay that by your own admission either. So we're trying to prove that half nezek is regular restitution. So lo tema hapachos mashahizik. Don't say that the implication is if you pay less than what you damaged, you're exempt. Ela ema ha kamasha hizik mishalim al piatzmo. But the way you should interpret it is if you pay the amount of what you damaged, then you do pay because that's restitution. But if you pay less than restitution, you wouldn't pay from your own admission, because according to Rav Huna, that half nezek is a knas, even though that's the less than the damage is the same as the full damage, because they're both knas. So the only time that you wouldn't pay from your own admissions if you're paying what you damaged. If you're paying less than that, it's knas. So listen, so let the Mishnah word the general rule in a different word. Whoever doesn't pay the equal to what you damaged, then you don't pay based on your own admission, because that would be clear. The implication, if Rav Huna is correct, the implication is not correct. Demashma pachos umashma yaser. So that would imply that if you're paying less than the amount of damage or more than the more of damage, that is a knas. So the Gemara says tiyufta. So we have disproved Rav Huna's opinion that chatzi nezek is a knas. So when the unhabituated ox kills or damages, the half payment is monetary payment. So then the Gemara says a remarkable thing here. The hilchasa palga niska knasa, and the halacha is we paskin that the half nezek is a knas, is a fine. So the Gemara, whoa, what just happened? You just said we refuted that opinion. So how could we paskin like it if we just refuted it? So the Gemara says, it's true. Time amai itusav. Why did we disprove that opinion? Mishum delo katani kamasha hizik. Because the Mishnah didn't say, when it listed the general rule, it didn't say if you pay exactly what you damaged, then you don't pay to your own admission, because that's a restitution payment. But if you pay other than the exact amount, according to Rav Huna, whether it's more, whether it's less, that's a fine. Lo psikale. But we couldn't paskin that way. Kaven de ikachati nezek tzroros the hilchasa gemirilo de mamonahu mishum hachi lo katani. So basically, the Gemara refuted it, but now we have a way to answer up the question, and that is there's a different halacha in Bava Kama. So one of the different ways of damaging is called regel. If an animal steps on something in its normal course of walking, you're exempt from paying, because that's a very natural damage to occur. Well, depending on the situation, you might be exempt, because maybe the person shouldn't have left something in the street. But let's say if they would have went because you shouldn't have left something in the street. But if we do like in private property, you'd be obligated in full damage, because for an animal to step on something that's in its way is normal. So you'd have to guard your animal from doing that damage. But however, there's something called chatzi nezek tzroros. What if your animal steps on the street, but there's like a skokie alley, except the Kesumar Valley, and there's rocks there's gravel, and so the gravel or something shoots out from the side or in any direction from under the hoof of the animal. So in that case, the animal doesn't directly damage it. The animal only, in its course of its regular walking, caused the projectile to shoot out. So if something damaged that way, the halacha is you're only obligated to pay half of the damage it caused because it's somewhat irregular for something to shoot out from under its foot. So the halacha is chatin as tzroros the hilchasa gemiri la demonahu. It's a halacha Moshe Sinai. It's an oral tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu that chatin as tzroros is a restitution payment, even though it's not equal to the damage. Mishum hachi loktani. Therefore, the Mishnah couldn't word it that if you pay exactly, because there is a case where you pay less than what you damaged, and it's a mammon case, and it's a restitution payment. It's not a knas payment, and that's called chatzin nezek tzroros. It's from the rock being shot up from under the hoof of your animal as it walks. So even though we didn't have an answer to answer up the question from our Mishnah, this is the answer to our question, and we have not disproved either opinion. And the Gemara says we paskin that the opinion that chatzi nezek is a knas. When an animal gores and damages, when it's a tam, when it's not habituated to gore, the payment that you pay, the half payment, is a fine. It's not a monetary payment. So he's saying it's a fine that he said because you shouldn't have had to worry about that an irregular axe is considered that you don't have to worry that it's going to damage. So therefore, the fact that it damages is completely unusual. So the Torah said pay half just to make you be a little bit more careful in trying to guard your animal that it shouldn't behave in that way. So the Gemara says, "V'hashta demarta palga niska knas." So now that we paskin that half the nezek is a knas payment, hai kabel de achal imri. If you had a dog that ate sheep, v'shunur de achal tarnagoli ravivi, and a cat that ate a big chicken. So a cat, it's a dog usually doesn't kill a sheep. A cat usually doesn't kill a big chicken. A cat would go after a smaller chicken. This is an unusual case of damage, and we don't collect it in Bavel. Aval zutre, but if a small one, it's normal for it to kill it, and therefore it's a regular damage. Umagbina, we do collect it. So what's this talking about? So this page that we've been talking about is very Bava Kama halacha. And this last line is actually more of a Gemara Sanhedrin. So the halacha is that only dayanim, in order to charge a knas payment, the dayanim have to have smicha, and if they're in Bavel, they have to have permission from the Reish Galusa to judge. Nowadays we don't have smicha, so we're saying in Bavel we're not everyone had smicha or permission. They weren't allowed to judge cases that were knas. So that's what this Gemara is saying, that these unusual damages fall under the category of knas. So you need to have smicha and permission from your government, if you're in Chutzaretz at least, to
what did you call that? Under the what name?
The Reish Galusa?
No, you said under the category of Kanan?
Knas, a fine.
Kanat.
Meaning regular restitution damage. The dayanim in Bavel could force you to make a restitution payment. But let's say in Bavel, if someone stole an animal and then butchered it, you would have to pay 4 or 5 times the value of the animal. In Bavel, they're not allowed to force you to pay the 4 or 5 times. They'd only be allowed to force the thief to pay the value of the animal that it stole, the restitution cost. Knas is a fine, so that's more, or in this case also could be less, this discussion that we just had, of the damage. So in Bavel, they could they're only allowed to rule on the regular cases, not on knas, not on fines. So the case of an animal goring is an unusual damage. A case of a cat eating a large chicken is unusual. So it doesn't fall into a category of something an animal would naturally do. A damage that an animal would naturally do, that would be restitution. But when an animal acts in an unusual way, that a dog would kill a sheep, which is much bigger than it, and eat it, or a cat would kill a large chicken and eat it, that behavior is not normal dog or cat behavior. So therefore, it falls under the category of an ox goring,
But if
and therefore it's knas.
one could show willful negligence, then it would change.
I wouldn't say willful negligence. Like, I mean, if your cat would go and catch someone's pet racing pigeon, maybe, I don't know how good of a racing or a home one of those carrier pigeons. So cats eat pigeons, so that's not an unusual thing. Or a small chicken, that's not an unusual thing for a cat to do. So to say that you have to keep your cat locked up 100% of the time is not usual, but for a cat to do, there's a regular damage. So when an animal does a regular natural damage, you pay the full amount because it's just restitution. When an animal acts in an unnatural, aggressive way. So if an animal starts goring and causes damages, so the first 3 times we didn't know that this was the normal behavior for this particular animal. So when it's unusually aggressive behavior, you don't pay. So it would fall under the category of similar to an animal goring. So in Bava Kama, we'd call that Karen, injury with a horn, even if the animal doesn't have a horn. So the cat going after a large chicken is not a normal behavior for a cat. So that means your cat is unnaturally aggressive. So a cat doing that would be similar to an animal, to an ox damaging by goring another animal or another object. So we need animal psychologists here for Bava Kama to understand the nezik of Karen. Karen is an unnaturally aggressive act, whereas Regel is an animal walking. It's a damage that an animal naturally would do, either by walking or it sees some food right there, so it naturally would stop and take it. I know this is sound bad. I saw a video on the internet yesterday. It was like in Kuala Lumpur or something. They have like sugarcane trucks with sugarcane driving by, but you have to stop for the elephants for whatever reason. There's signs they stop. So the elephants goes on the road to make the truck stop, and then it takes some of the sugarcane out of the truck.
I was thinking
aggressive
of
behavior, but that's the animal psychology. They learned that it can control the situation and hijack a little bit of the sugarcane for itself.
Okay.
That's a little different. I was saying the animal psychology of Bava Kama, what type of damage it is.
But how about a pit bull that was not trained as well as it should have been?
So I would. That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't learned Bava Kama in a while, but if you have an animal that's naturally aggressive, well, let's put it this way. So an animal that's dangerous in general, you're not allowed to have. We're going to see that in a few more lines. The last few lines in the perek says you're not allowed to have a dangerous dog in your house. So you're not allowed to have anything in your house, including a rickety ladder. If there's something in your house that can cause damage, you're not allowed to have it. So to have a pit bull, even if it's trained well, it's probably not a great idea. So if it's one child, if you could own a dog, to own a pit bull, I would say it's not mutter, because it's something dangerous. Even if you think it's trained, but something could happen and then it could act aggressive again. So if you have something super dangerous, how would the law of Karen apply? I don't remember. I understand the question. It's a good question. I don't know the answer. For Penn and Teller, didn't they have the lions or something, or so even if they think the lion's trained, but it's still a lion. It's going to bite someone at some point. But if an animal kills a smaller animal, that's normal behavior, and they would collect in bava because that's a regular payment and it's a restitution payment. However, if they grabbed it, you wouldn't take it away from him. So Rashi says, so Rashi says if the victim was able to get money from the somehow from the damaging party, they would get to keep the money, even though the Beis Din can't say that Shimon owes money to Ruvain. But if Ruvain grabbed the money, they would say Ruvain keeps it. Tosfos does not like that because Tosfos says that by based in saying that Reuven gets to keep it, they're deciding a money on a knas case. So Tosfos says, and I don't fully understand what Tosfos means, but Tosfos says that if somehow Reuven captured Shimon himself, not money from Shimon, but Shimon himself, he gets to keep it. I don't know how he gets to keep the person. That's Rabbeinu Tam's opinion, but I don't know what you get by unless you just because you're angry at him because he damaged and you can't collect, you could take it out on him. Rabbeinu Tam holds you could take it out on him and grab him, but you can't grab his belongings because if so, you'll be grabbing all of his belongings and it would be a bad situation. So I don't know if I understand if Rabbeinu Tam just holds it psychologically, you grab him to make yourself feel better, but you're not getting money. So I don't understand what Rabbeinu Tam says. But Tosfos says at the end, it seems Vidochek, Tosfos doesn't like Rabbeinu Tam's explanation. The Iyamar Ikbul Zimna Le'eretz Yisrael. So what if? So Shimon's animal damaged, Reuven's animal in an unusual way. Shimon's cat ate Reuven's large chicken. So they can't a based in Bavel can't rule in it. But what if they agree to go to Eretz Yisrael to a based in? So if Shimon will say, let's make an appointment for a based in Eretz Yisrael, then we would make an appointment. The Iloa and then if he wouldn't show up, then we would put him in a cherem, in a ban for not coming to the based in. Excuse me. But the Gemara says but for us, whether he wants to go to Eretz Yisrael or not, we would put him in a ban on him. Because we would tell him you have to remove your thing which is causing damage, which in this case was a cat or a dog. Rabbi Nassan, because of the psak of Rabbi Nassan, the Tanya, because we went in a brayso. Rabbi Nassan Omer. Rabbi Nassan says, "Minayin shelo yigadol adam kelev rab aveso." How do we know that you're not allowed to raise a bad dog in your house? So this is, Marty, exactly what you were asking about the pitfall. So you can't have a bad ladder in your house. Shenamar, the pasuk says, you're not allowed to have blood on your house. This is talking about a makkah, that you have to put a fence or a parapet around your roof. So you can't have anything in your house that can cause damage to others. If someone would use your ladder, they don't know that it's the bad ladder, they might fall and break themselves or break something else. So you can't have anything dangerous in your house. So the fact that you had an animal that was causing danger like this, he would put him in a ban for violating this halacha. Now, so if you had what you thought was a regular cat or a regular dog, and then it started acting that way, what the halacha would be, I'm not sure. But I would say that certainly the halacha is you can't have a pit bull, it's dangerous. If you have an animal that's dangerous, so would you have to wait till it does it 3 times so we know that it's habituated, that it's going to act this way, and then you'll have to kill it because you can't have something dangerous. So for that I don't know. We have to figure out what the halacha is, but it's important. So Hadaran Alon Elu Naros. I just saw last week that we usually say Hadron, we will return to you, but they have a Rav Yashaber in Yiddish was giving a share on a siyum and he taught it a shul, and so he pronounced it Hadaran. So Hadaran Allah Elu Naros, we will return to you perek Elu Naros, and we'll start the 4th perek. And I texted the guy at Art Scroll, the guy who emailed me that he's our account rep, and he said, "Oh, you're a shul, you can't use me, you have to go to someone else." So I didn't have time to email the other guy, so I don't have Gemaras yet. I'm sorry, but I'll share the screen with the Gemara.